Hello. Hey, Fearless. It's Tiffany Young with Investor Life. I forgot to add myself to the stream, so here we go. Welcome, guys. I see that we've got a few on, so jump on and say hello. It always helps me to be knowing that I'm not talking to myself, right? So lovely to see y'all. I know that there's so many of you guys that are so loyal to us and so supportive. So thank you guys. Really, really, really always appreciate that. So hey, Lisa, Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta. Maybe, although you just sold your primary, so who knows where you are now. Lisa's been doing our STR, short-term rental version of Mind Your Own Properties on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So if you haven't caught one of them yet, it's Mind Your Own Properties. So self-managers, usually Sam Lee does it. Amazing job that he's always done in giving his tips and tricks that he's learned over the years. He is away in Hong Kong for a bit, and of course the time change makes it a little crazy, so Lisa is stepping in. Lisa changed over a couple of long-term rentals to short-term rentals because it just was not working as was, and all the stuff that she's learned and the numbers and how it all came out, she shares with us every week, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So make sure to jump on there. So hey, George, nice to see you. So Nova Scotia, yeah, we've got like coast to coast. I love it. So it's awesome. Good to see you. Thanks, Joan. The Going Gray. It's moving along. So good to see you too. Turkeys, man, you guys got lots going on. So yeah, congrats on your latest project there. It's looking beautiful out in Ontario. So is it a 6-plex or an 8-plex? I can't remember yet at this moment. But yeah, and doing a money raise for that. So keep rolling, guys. It's awesome. Chris, nice to see you. I look forward to our call. We're back from holidays. So we actually took some time off last month, legit time off, which was amazing. So yeah, it's a 6-plex. Okay, Eric, just so you know, you're not signed into StreamYard. You haven't given the permissions. I know it's ridiculous how often you have to do it, but that way your name will show up in our feed and people can contact you if they need or want to. So on the way to Janet Jackson. Amazing. Sweet. Okay, well, have fun, guys. I guess both you guys and us are mourning our hockey teams not being at the playoffs, so concerts are the next best thing. I completely agree. Ooh, cool. Okay, so Drew Kardash helped you guys. Alberta on Fire helped you guys to buy a place in Fort Saskatchewan. Yeah, we'll cross fingers for you too. So, all right. So click the big blue button, Julie says, if you're wanting to give StreamYard permission. So hey guys, we've got a really interesting, okay, so here's how this all came about for today. So we've had a few investors reach out to us through our Ignited Mentorship Program, of course. We had a couple of questions, but also just some of you guys here in Fearless that are saying, hey, you know, it's renewal time, and we're finding, right, spring is often the time when our leases renew. I myself personally, we always have our leases renew in fall and spring, not summer and winter, because of the market that we're in for sure, but also just because those seem to be, even cross country, just really good times to have your leases renew. So you know, we raise our rents often in the spring, that kind of thing. So it's renewal time. And here's 3 things that have happened in just the last maybe month that kind of spurred on tonight's training. So we had one investor that is maybe, I'm going to say like maybe 6-7 years into investing, and said, you know what? I've made some money at it. That's good enough for me at this point. And I'm selling. And we said, really interesting, like good for you, you know, no one to sell, no one to get out. That's great. But their reason for selling was because the renewing of their rents or their lease was stressful to them, because last year it didn't go so smooth. So they have had, you know, tenants in for a while. They had done minimal raises for the last, I don't know, 2-3 years, it sounds like. And then last year they did a little bit of a bigger raise because the market has jumped a bit, and the tenants were upset about it, and it didn't go well, left a bad taste in their mouth. And so, of course, our investors are now feeling bad about it and are like, you know what, we don't want to go through that again. We're happy where we're at. We're selling. That's number one. So, all right, we don't want to be selling because we're stressed out, and renewal time can be great, but it can also be stressful. Hey guys, nice to see you. Hey Donna, haven't seen you in a bit. Out from Winnipeg. So okay, so Lisa, before I go on, I see which month specifically. So I try to, although it it doesn't always work out, but I try to do May is my favorite, by far my favorite. That's when we get the most increases, it seems. But April, May, June, and then September, October at the very latest. I don't go past October ever. So if I have a lease break or something, or people are renting and they're like, oh, let's say they're renting in September and they're like, oh, can we go till November or whatever, or October and go to November? I always say to them, I'll do an 11-month lease, or I'll do a 9-month lease. And I say to them, it's because in winter it's really tough for us. If I have a vacancy in November, I'm probably going to have it till January. So as a landlord, I can't risk those 2 months. So we need to tie you into a lease that's going to end, in a good time of the year. And I just tell people right out, and everyone is totally fine with it. So those are the months that I usually jump onto. Yeah, no problem. I see you now, Eric. That's right. Sixplex in Ontario doing amazing stuff. And yes, now we can actually see you. Hey, from Ontario, another Ontarian. Hey, perfect. Andrea, nice to have you with us today. All right, Cape Breton. I'm going to guess that this is Melissa or maybe Lisa. Not exactly sure, but anyways, welcome guys. So that's number one thing that we heard from someone, is that they decided to sell their property instead of doing a lease renewal because they didn't want to face the tenants and the stress that came with it. Because last year, their renewal and raising of rents, and we generally do recommend raising every year. I used to keep my rents the same, thinking, oh, not much has changed. But between property taxes, insurance, interest rates, as we all know, even in decent markets, you generally are going up in costs as landlords every single year. So even if you raise a minimal amount just to kind of keep that up, we generally do recommend raising every year. It just keeps the bite a little bit smaller. And so, of course, a little bit easier to manage for your tenants. So second thing that happened that spurred this on, we had a question in Ignited was, hey, like we're decently long time investors. We have had this tenant for 3 or 4 years, but it's definitely time to raise rents. Rents have jumped in our area, but we've kept rents fairly low for them, and we feel that it's kind of unreasonable to ask what the market is saying. So rents were at about $2,000 a month. The market is saying that they were at $2,500 a month now, at least, but they're saying $500 a month is a little crazy. How do we approach this and keep a good relationship while not encouraging them to leave, right? Because we want to keep our tenants. We know that it's pretty tough to get good tenants. So when we have them, we want to keep them. So that was an Ignited. So of course that spurred this on. And then last thing was also an Ignited member that is new to renting, and, put in a question saying like, hey, okay, I talked to my tenant. The tenant said, I'd prefer not to have a raise. It's like, well, yes, so would I. I'd prefer my insurance and my interest rates and everything to stay down too, right? We all do. But that's not reality. So how do we deal with them in a dignified and respectful manner? So this is something that came about, again, by accident. Absolutely. I see this note. Yeah, you have to give your proper notices. You have to know your legislation within your province. You have to know, what's legal to be able to do in raises. Ontario and BC, you have your set limits already. Alberta, you can only do it once a year. Saskatchewan, once a year. So you have to know your legislation, right? But once you know your legislation, how do you raise rents? Let's say that legislation allows you to, and you know that you've got a good tenant you want to keep, and you want to keep that relationship really good. That's what we're going to talk about today. So we've got 3 main points. I'm going to share my screen. You can take pictures of the screenshots of it to show you exactly the wording to use that we found works really, really well, which is keeping that relationship nice, dignified, and being fair, right? As landlords, we know that if we're just out there to get everything ourselves, it's not going to work in the long term. So we want to be givers. And so how do we do that? exact words that we use in our text emails to our tenants. And yes, I do always recommend having some sort of a paper trail. So text or email, even if you have that verbal conversation, wrap it up with a summary text of here's what we talked about. And so here's the things that you want to throw in there. So yeah, no caps in Saskatchewan, no caps in Alberta. That's awesome. So when the market does jump and when our interest rates do jump, we actually can raise rents to kind of correlate. Whereas in some markets, your interest rates might have jumped and your payments went super high, but your rents can't jump as much because there is a cap. So yeah, it's a little bit of a balancing act, right? We got all these plates up in the air. So all right, so where am I? Okay, 3 things that we're going to talk about: what we have to do before the lease renewal, okay, what we have to do in positioning when the lease is renewing, and then I want to talk about kind of the bigger picture in how we do that balancing act and how we kind of figure those things through. Okay, so yeah, this is a really nice thing. So, and I know, Eric, you're into newer buildings, building them yourself, developing them yourself. But yeah, no caps in Ontario if it's newer than 2018. And why did they do that? Because they know darn well that the expenses have not kept up with the rents. And so it's good. It's nice. I'm just going to kind of, every time I put the comments on, I cut myself off a little. So I'm going to raise my chair a little. There we go. All right. Okay, yeah, thanks for all that. And you guys throw in where you're from and what the what the legislation provides for in regards to this conversation. Throw it in the chat where you're from and what the legislation does, so that we can all be learning from each other. All right. I'm just going to put this out there right now too. I made myself a note. So we've had 2 posts in Fearless this week that really talk about some tough times. One sounds like you've been taken advantage of, outright fraud. You put a fraud image on. So just wanted to reach out to you guys that are out there struggling, as you don't have to struggle alone. So book a call with us. We are here to help you if you're in trouble. You can book a call straight from our website, investorlife.com, or you can book, email us at info@investorlife.com. So if you're in trouble, guys, please don't hesitate to reach out. Yes, we support our Ignited members first and foremost. They are, we're there to coach them. Their success is our success. They're our priority. But you guys, if you're in a little bit of trouble, someone else also posted something that we had to delete that, was just not good. And so we just want you guys to know, if you're having a hard time and you're in a rough spot, please reach out, because we definitely want to help. And there's so many people in this group that want to help. So hey, YYC, I don't know who you are, but hey. All right. So have you guys, and Angie, you're here from Saskatoon, you've been self-managing 10 plus properties for 10 plus years. Joan from Calgary, you're the same thing. Eric from Ontario. Like, we've got people all over the place. Melissa out in Cape Breton. Does it kind of give you a little bit of butterflies in your tummy when you think about doing those lease renewals? Where you're just like, first of all, I don't know how to set the rents. Second, I don't know what to say. What if they kick back? What if they decide to move? Like, do you get those little butterflies in your tummy? So put a thumbs up or a thumbs down, one or the other. Yeah. Yep. Lisa says, yep, I sure do. Hey, Christine, good to see ya. Okay, so this is a question for Eric. So Eric, I'm going to let you answer that. Yeah. So I certainly get those butterflies in my tummy. I've been doing this for 20 years and I still get those butterflies in my tummy when it comes to raising rents. I've learned to position things really nicely. And that's point number 2 that we're going to talk about, is the positioning, so that we leave people with dignity, and so that we keep our own dignity, and so that we protect our businesses. To me, the worst thing, this is really what spurred this training, is when, like I said, an investor that had a good property decided to sell it in a market that is extremely low on rental housing. And we know that Canada needs rental housing. That house is going to be sold to a homeowner, and that leaves the market because it's difficult for them to keep it and deal with, tenant issues. So We don't want to be leaving the market. We want to be holding on not only for ourselves and our investors as long as we can, but also just for in general, that people need places to live and we can give them nice places to live. So we want to stay in the market. How do we do that? That's positioning. That's number 2. All right. Thanks, Lisa. All right. So we are going to talk about those kind of things. First off, when we have those butterflies in our tummy, I want to talk about why. Making sure that our extra expenses that we've had over the year get covered. So it's not just things like, the stove or the washing machine went. It's things like interest rates, have risen and taken our mortgage payment on that place from a reasonable amount to unreasonable amount. It no longer covers itself. Maybe it's now a negative property. We also don't want to scare off our tenants and have them move, right? We also don't want them to be mad at us and feel like we're taking advantage of them when they don't know the whole story. And we want to be a good human. We want to be fair, right? Anything else, put it in the chat. I'll make sure to address them. If there's anything else that makes your tummy go, ugh, this is not fun. I don't want to be doing this. So I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to see if we can find a balance today. Okay, guys? So just going to share my screen. Oh, why isn't it? There we go. I chose the wrong one, and that's why. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. And here's my first tip, guys. My first tip is what we want to do before we have a renewal. We want to get ourselves organized. So first thing is when we have a renewal, we want to be on it, right? With talking to them and getting them renewed early. I am not the best at it, but there are some things that do make me a little bit better. And that is first being organized. So this is how I do it. Now, we used to use a property management software. Okay. When we were running over 100 properties at one given time, we had property management software. We no longer need it and became tedious to use it when we don't have that many properties anymore. So I just use my phone. And so here's what I do. I put in a contact. So as soon as you sign a lease with someone, you put them in your contacts. You put in their, mobile numbers. You put in their, well, in this case, you can kind of see. So I've got their email. I've got a date in here, okay? So you can choose to have important dates. That is usually a birthday or an anniversary. On my Samsung, I can choose to put in other, and that's when I put their lease end date. And then it will let me know on their date that this has come up. Okay, I also do other things to remember that, but we're going to talk about these things first. I put their work info. Why? Because sometimes they mention it in conversation. Maybe it's not on the application, or maybe you're using single key and single key gets the application and you don't get all that info anymore. But it's really handy to have if you ever need to chase them. So I always put any extra info. It might be their employment, whatever it might be. I put that in. I also put in that they are a tenant. I use the word tenant every single time, and then I put the property address that they are. So tenant, 28 Campbell Road, and it ends on July 24th, 2023. Okay, I put in these things so that I don't have to then look for it. When I am needing to get a hold of them, I have it all in one place. Phonetic name, I just use that as their spouse or partner's name or roommate's name, whatever it might be. So all of these things, you can also add them into a group. I have a group just for my tenants, and what that does is it allows me to turn off my phone. Well, it used to. I keep my ringer off now 24/7, but when I used to keep a ringer on, it allowed me to say excluding these people after 6 p.m. or whatever it might be. So you can use all of these things. This is just in your phone. So that's number one. You're going to add, you're going to add them. Number one, add to contacts as a tenant every time, even if you can't remember their name, or even maybe you can't remember the address that they're in. You type in tenant, you scroll through, and you're able to find them. It says number 3, but it's number 2, is that you want to add their lease expiry to your calendar in your phone as well. So that for me is what I do. I add it in by the date. So June 24th, 2023, it will say that, lease ending for number whatever, such and such. And then I put in a 60-day reminder ahead of time that reminds me, okay, it's 60 days. We should probably get in touch. So there is lots of stuff in this chat. There we go. Again, Angie has been self-managing for over 10 years, multiple properties. So exactly what I do. So as soon as we sign the lease, goes in the calendar with a 60-day reminder, and then I don't need to worry about it. You have to tell your tenant that you need to sell. Okay, some of these tips that we're going to talk about next year in positioning will definitely help you. Okay, so stick with us tonight, would ya? I don't know who you are, but I know I hate that feeling too. I've had to do it a lot of times too, and I always feel bad. But there are some things that you can do to position it. So stick with us here. All right. There's lots of chatter in the chat. Awesome. Good, good, good. So the current rents, okay, so in this example, if it was this property with this tenant, I changed the names, by the way, and the properties and everything. So this is just an example one. But I'm basing it off of a real tenant that is in one of our real houses. So the existing rent here is $21.25, I believe, and it will probably be going to about $23.50. So there's a bit of a jump. It's not a huge jump, but that is in the very least what the market will say for this one. So for our pretend property that's based on a real property, those are the numbers there. Okay, that's cool. That's a cool idea. I like it. I take a picture of their driver's license and put it as their picture so that you have that information as well. Beautiful. I love it. I am so going to be doing that. Thank you for that tip. If you guys have any other tips, things that you do to keep yourself organized as a self-manager, throw it in here, please. Some awesome stuff. Okay. So that's the first thing, guys, is that we want to stay organized, and that happens upon signing of the lease, okay? If you try to do it later when your stuff isn't fresh in mind, it's just a whole lot harder. So if you have a checklist for your onboarding of your tenants, add it in there, those two things. You're going to add them as a contact using the word tenant and the address and all the information you have on them. As well, you're going to add it to your calendar with a 60-day reminder for their end date. Now, what do we do 60 days ahead, right? So that 60-day reminder comes for next year. Hey, your lease is expiring in 60 days. Now, what do we do? So for us, there's a couple of things that we do. First off, and I'll share my screen again. And this is all positioning, okay? So we remember our goal is to raise the rents to what we need them to go to, whether that's what the market says or below if we can. Of course, having below market rents is always going to keep tenants longer and keep them happier. But also we want to make sure that our stuff, our expenses are covered and that we are running a business, right? We are running a business. This is a business that if we have to get out of, that leaves less housing for Canadians, which we know is already in crisis. So it's in our best interest as well as everyone else's to be able to stick around. So this is all positioning. Here we go, share screen. Go right back to this slide or this presentation. Now, slide number 2, this you can take screenshots of if you would like. I tried to, I'm not very good at this stuff, and I thought of it like too late that I was like, oh, I should have a visual for this so that people can just screenshot it because that's what I like to do. And then I have it. So text number 1, email or text, always good idea to have a paper trail. I know I mentioned this at the beginning, but even if you're having verbal conversations, if they're older or that's your relationship with them already, that's fine, but always send somehow a paper trail of this is the summary of what we talked about. And here's what it would look like. So your first question is super casual. So, hey, Christy, just checking in. How are you guys doing? You could be like, how's everything? How did the snow melt? Did the eaves troughs leak this year? Did that new dryer, is that working out for you? Hopefully you like it. Whatever it might be, right? We're talking to human beings, so be a human being. So how you guys doing or whatever it might be. Your lease ends on the 24th. Do you know your plans? Do you plan to stay? So I never say, are you moving out? I always just say, do you plan to stay? We hope so, but I thought I would just check in, whatever it might be. Okay. So whatever your relationship is, the point is that your first text isn't technical. Your first text is super casual. Hey, how's it going? Your lease is ending. What's your plans? Just looking for feelers right now. So once they respond, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this part, you'll see the next text, your response is, okay, perfect. I'll let the office know and I'll get back to you, okay, in the next couple of days. So let's talk about, for a second, why are we saying I'll let the office know, or I'll let my partners know, or I'll let whoever know, my investors, and I'll get back to you. So who's heard of, and I know Igniteds have, but that's okay, throw your hand up. Who's heard of third partying? Third partying. We hired, it was our very first business coach back in probably 1998 or 1999. And she taught us about third partying. So who has heard of third partying? Yeah. Hey, Mel. Okay, so you heard about it from us. We heard about it from, shoot, what was her name now? She's actually passed away now. But anyways, I will think of her name. So she was, the Motivation Source was her company. I don't know if it's still around or not, but anyway, she was awesome. So yes, perfect. Good. You guys have heard about it. The idea of third no. If you third party it, the idea of it is that you are taking the responsibility off of yourself. So with all of our tenants in property management, we do our best to not let them know that we're the owners or have, ownership in it, because our job becomes a lot harder as self-managers when they think we're this rich investor. I would love if everyone was, but you know as well as I do as investors that it is tough to get into this game, and it's even tougher to stay in this game. So the, view of landlords as all being rich couldn't be furthest from the truth. We know that, but they don't. So if you go in there as the owner, they're going to think, oh, you can skip payments for them, you can forgive rent, all kinds of things. But if you go in third partying and you say to them, I'll check with the office, I'll check with my manager, I'll check with my investor, I'll check with my partner, whatever it might be, that whoever's in your circle, it in their mind takes away the power of you making decisions, which is wise to always check with others anyways, right? So the idea is that we're third partying. We're not saying, oh, perfect, here's a decision, and then have them say to you later, ask you a question, you go, oh, I have to ask my partner. Really? Because you didn't have to ask them for raising the rent, right? So we want to be consistent in our positioning, consistent in our messaging. Thanks, Tammy. Nice to see ya. We're in it and we're furthest from it. Exactly. It's not a game where we're all rolling in dough. We have to work our tails off before any little bit of that comes. And until then, we're usually cash strapped, but nobody thinks of that. Okay. Tenants don't think of us that way. So that's the first thing, is why are we pausing instead of just going straight into, okay, you're staying, perfect. Glad to hear that you're staying. We love having you as a tenant. Here's what I have to talk to you about. Instead of doing that, we're third partying and giving it a little bit of space. Now, when we come back to them, again, that's your text number 1. That is 60 days ahead of your lease renewal, ideally. Okay, if you miss it by a few days, whatever. But that's text number 1. Text number 2. Okay, that's text number 1. Take a screenshot, take a picture, whatever you got to do. This is how we raise rents and keep our relationships with our tenants well and be fair, right? Number 2, there we go. Couple days later, okay, give it a little bit of space. Let them start thinking, okay, well, our rent's probably going to go up. Let them come to their own conclusions in those things. Here's some examples, okay? 2 different examples of how to end it, but here's the overall idea. You go back to them again casually. Don't go in with some formal rent raise letter. I hate those things. Just be you and be in the voice and the personality that you were when you rented it to them. Trying to be appealing to them. Well, we're still trying to be appealing to them, right? We still want to be teammates. Okay, so rents have jumped a ton. It's crazy with interest rates going up. Or whatever it might be. You've been so awesome though that I'm happy to keep the rent below market value. Sigh of relief, right? You're immediately disarming and saying, I'm willing to do this. So the market's saying that I should be getting, and in our example, 2,500-ish for this place. I know that's a huge jump, and I don't need that. I just need this place to cover its own expenses, or whatever wording you want to use. I need this place to be fair to my investors, or I need this place to be slightly profitable, or at least not negative. Whatever wording you want to use, okay? You can make this your own, and you should make this your own. And then we're going to go into an explanation. We're going to include them in this decision, okay? That's our goal. From when you started renting to now, our mortgage payments have gone up. Hang on, can I do this? No, I cannot. There. From when you started renting to now, our mortgage payments, because I said interest rates, you could say our taxes, you could say our property management, you could say the, with us having to replace 4 of the 5 appliances last year, whatever it might be, that's truth in your case, has gone up by XX amount. And you're going to share with them the actual amount. Your expenses, like this one, we just raised rents in one place, and we're like, the mortgage on this one went up by $450 a month. So we're not raising your rent that much. However, it doesn't make sense for us to keep this house at such a negative. So you're including them in the decision. You're letting them see from your perspective that you are just human as well. Okay. So let me keep reading. You can also say stuff like, and again, this is just an idea, okay? So you're going to edit this to be yours. Insurance has gone up, property taxes, whatever. My thought is to raise rents by that amount or somewhat close to it, which would mean, and then you'll say how much rent you are wanting. But I wanted to involve you in the decision. So here's key. I wanted to involve you in the decision, because I truly appreciate how you've taken care of the house and the yard. Always include the yard because no one takes care of the yard. How do you feel about that, though? Is that a huge stretch for you? Okay, so hopefully you guys have gotten out of that what you need to take. But let me tell you the story of how this came about. It's awesome to say, oh yeah, we're pros at this, but it all came about by accident. So years and years ago, we bought a property at the height of our market. The property went down in value, as did rents. So it was no longer even remotely covering itself. And when the tenants that were in it when we bought it, because it came fully tenanted, when they left, we were looking at $300 less a month in rent. You may have heard our story talking about this property, because we then turned it into a short-term rental, corporate rental. It is now an Airbnb. We've had quite the long history with this property, but this is the property I'm talking about. So I went in there and I'm like, I got to raise their rent by this was before they left. Okay. So I have to raise this couple's rent by $200 just to break even on this place. So I'm saying to them, I feel really bad, but this is it. This is the expenses. This is how much it's costing a week. This is my thought. And this I did in person back then. I would go to their place. I don't do that anymore, but I just kind of left it with them out of inexperience. And they were like, well, I said, so is that too much for you? And they're like, no, it's not. And I'm like, oh, it's not? No, I said, it's not a stretch for you to go that big of a jump? They're like, not really. I mean, we'd prefer not to, but we understand why. It's okay. I don't know what's going on, if I'm still alive or not, but anyways. So all of those things come together to today, this being our regular practice. This is our systemized approach to rental increases, is we include them in the conversation. Another way you can say it is, what do you feel is fair? I wasn't planning on raising rents this much, but unfortunately with the rising interest rates or with whatever, we have no choice. So does that work for you? Is it an undue burden on you? Please let me know what you need. And it's amazing, guys, it's amazing how many people go, no, I get it, I understand. And the raising of rents becomes from a stressful experience into this, we're on the same team, we're working together so that you can stay in this house and I don't have to sell it and you don't have to leave and all these things. And I'm doing my best to keep it fair. And it's amazing. It's amazing how it works. So hopefully you guys, hopefully it works. Hopefully that works for you. All right, see lots of does rich in experience count? We're definitely rich in experience, aren't we, Tammy? Okay, so if you have any questions, guys, let me know. Okay, throw it in the chat if you have any questions. But that is point number 2 is positioning. Okay, so point number 1 is organizing so that we can be on it when 60 days ahead comes, so that if they're not staying, we can get it re-rented, or so that if they are staying, we can have our leases well in place and not have to be scrambling in an ideal world. Number 2, positioning. These are the texts that you're going to say. I'll just quickly one more time put those up on the screen so that if anybody needs them, you've got them. Text number 1, you can take I didn't share yet, did I? There we go. Text number 1, take a screenshot of that 60 days before lease end. That's text number 1. And text number 2 is a variation of this. I left in everything in here so you can pick and choose which one to use. But that is text number 2. All right, so let's talk for a minute here about why we are coming in with this. One thing that investors forget, and one thing I didn't even know about until years into investing, was that we have to think of our investing, our properties, our rents, our raises, our cash flow, all of that. We have to think of it as a whole entire, look at the big picture thing. So what I call this for tonight's segment is we want to win the war, not the battle. So let's say that you increase rents and you do it despite what they want and they've had no say in it and you're unreasonable or whatever it might be. Chances are they're leaving next year, right? So now you have a problem on your hands. That doesn't help us win the war. It may help us win a battle, but not the war. And again, in real estate, the longer we can be in, the better we can be. The mortgages are paid down, our rents have gone up, the markets have changed, all that kind of stuff. So we want to remember that we want to leave them with dignity so that we're winning the war, right? That when they do move out, they leave the place beautiful, that we're not having a lot of work. We want to remember that next year's vacancy is being thought about this year. And so if we don't treat them right, it's going to come back to us. We want to remember too that if we give people a say in their rental increases, they feel like they've been part of the conversation. They aren't bitter about it. They understand most people are reasonable. So it's important to think of, and this whole kind of prospect is, even like in vacancies, people think, well, if I get a vacancy, I can get $200 more a month. Like if they move out, I can get $200 more a month. That's market. So that's great. That's $2,400 more a year. But if they were paying $2,400 and you have a month of vacancy, you're at even anyway. So think of it on an annual term. Okay. Think of it annually, not monthly, but annually. How much will I get out of this property if I do this versus doing this? And sometimes we forget to think of it that way. So, yours has gone through the roof. Let's see. Yeah, we've got lots of payments in here. Mortgage payment up by $500 a month. Yeah. And you know what? Tenants, it's all over the news. Tenants know that. They've maybe tried to qualify on a mortgage. They know that these things are happening. So it's not news to them. So just remind them, I guess. All right. So guys, that's it. One last point to this is take these notes from tonight, take your screenshots or whatever it is that you've got, take your screenshots, your pictures, your notes from tonight, put them in a notes app so that next time you have a renewal, you don't have to dig around for them. So text 1, text 2, text 3, and you've got it all. You cut and paste, customize it, and send it. Okay, so that's my kind of last pro tip on that. Guys, if you're having trouble doing these kinds of things, reach out. So you can book a call with us anytime. Most calls that we have booked are so that we can share information about our Ignited program. It's our mentorship, our coaching program. All these kinds of things are all built in. You get to ask your questions, to us directly when you're in our mentorship program. But regardless of that, if you're having a rough time, I feel like there's a lot of investors that are having a bit of a rough time right now. So I feel just compelled to kind of be like, okay, no, we need to kind of open that up a little bit more to just helping people. So if you're in a stuck spot, and 2 of you in Fearless in the last week have made posts that have let us know that you're in a stuck spot. So please reach out. So hopefully that helped you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I hope that it helps you stay in the market longer. Hope it gives you some tips and tricks. Igniters, we'll see you over in Laser in about 15 minutes. And yeah, cheers everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week for another Tactical Tuesday.